Lynn Worthy, the Kansas City Star's Royals beat writer, checks in from the road. He brings us the latest on Hunter Dozier, some pitching moves, Bubba Starling's Class AAA All-Star season, and tells us who he believes will be the Royals' All-Star representative. All of this on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's sports podcast. I'm your host, Blair Kerkhoff. Lynn Worthy, the Royals beat writer for the Kansas City Star, joins us. Lynn is in Cleveland. He just got finished covering the third and final game of the Royals-Indians series. The Royals lost this one 5-3, lost 2 out of 3 from Cleveland. He will be somewhere over Lake Erie and Lake Ontario tomorrow on his way to Toronto to cover the Royals' 4-game set with the Blue Jays before returning home. So, Lynn, let's quickly dismiss of today's game, Wednesday's game, the thing that struck a Freudian slip. The thing that struck out to me was 16 strikeouts by Royals hitters a night after a really nice victory. But what was the deal with Royals bats today?
Well, I think the primary deal with the Royals bats was Trevor Bauer, the starting pitcher for the Cleveland Indians, he was pretty close to lights out. They didn't get a hit off of him until the 5th inning. He accounted for 12 of those 16 strikeouts. He was throwing 96. He was changing speeds. They really couldn't get much going on him. And he only gave up 3 hits, and all 3 of those came in that 1 inning. Other than that, they really didn't do much of anything against Bauer. Got a little bit. They started to get a little bit cooking in the late innings once he was out of the game, but he basically handcuffed them.
Yeah, and that third hit of that 3-hit inning was the Billy Hamilton bloop double down the left field line. So they did get a run off of him, but it wasn't enough. The Royals lose. They fall to, I believe the record is 28-53 at this point. Have I got that about right?
That is correct. Through Wednesday, they're 28-53.
28-53 for a team that's been pretty much 500 the last 3 weeks. So not a discouraging sign or period of play for the Royals. They've had a few things go well for them. One of the things that has gone well for them in the very recent past was the return of Hunter Dozier, and his ninth inning at bat on Tuesday may be the highlight of the season for the Royals so far this year. Set it up for us. Royals enter the inning down. What was it? Was it 6-3?
It was. Yep, it was 6-3 against just the probably the hottest closer in Major League Baseball. Brad Hand had converted 22 of 22 save opportunities, so you had to feel good about that with the 3-run deficit. And the first 5 batters, including Dozier, reached base. It was Martin Maldonado, Billy Hamilton, then you had Witt, and then Nicky Lopez with an infield single that scored a run to make it 6-4, and then Alex Gordon with a sort of a bloop single to load the bases. And so then Dozier's coming up, and it's a 2-run game with Dozier coming up, and you're thinking a hit scores 2, and you at least are able to tie it up and then potentially take the lead if you get some more key at bats the rest of the lineup behind Dozier. But he skipped right over that and just decided to take him deep to center and just score 4 all at once. So that 2-run deficit at that point turned into a 2-run lead. And the Royals fans were clearly enthused. I was a little less enthused just because my story had been written, but that's one of those ones where you don't mind switching gears, I guess. So
right.
But of all the on the road against a team that is still in the hunt for the division there, even with the injuries and things that Cleveland's had, they're still on the Twins' tail trying to make a race out of this thing. And with the closer that's been lights out, they put together a 5-run 9th inning to win by 2. So yeah, it was it's sort of, and for Dozier, the last couple of games, he had a key hit in the rally that they didn't finish back at home in Kaufman against the Twins. And then I think he had another big hit. I remember the Sunday game. Saturday, I know he had a hit that that tied it, but then they ended up losing it in the 10th inning. But then he had another big hit. I can't remember. I think it was a double, maybe an RBI double on Sunday. And so, yeah, I mean, he had an IL stint, did a rehab, and then in between that and returning to the Royals, had he and his wife celebrated the birth of his baby daughter. So, yeah, it's been a busy week for him.
It has been. It really has been. And look, today's game notwithstanding, well, he struck out 4 times today, but any concerns that people had about him not regaining his form that had established him as the one of the eye-opening players in the American League until he strained the oblique, those were put to rest, as you mentioned, with some of the at-bats that he's had since he has returned. And let's revisit the Grand Slam, because there were some historical moments associated with that. It was his first career Grand Slam. What a time to do it! 9th inning of a game in which you're trailing. It was also the first time that the Royals had ever beaten the Indians in Cleveland when trailing by at least 3 runs going into the 9th inning. They were 0-115 in that situation. And the other thing was they had never hit. I don't think they'd ever hit a Grand Slam to go ahead to turn a deficit into a victory, or a lead, I should say, a deficit into a lead in the 9th inning. And they've had walk-off Grand Slams. They've had Grand Slams to break ties, but they haven't. But they've never had one that turned a deficit into a lead. So a lot of historical notes on the Hunter Dozier hit. What kind of pitch did he hit?
It was a slider. It was a slider that just stayed up enough for him to square it up and just take it deep to center. He hit a slider. As a matter of fact, I think it was he hit a home run. That's what it was on Sunday. I think Sunday he hit a home run, and that was a slider. But they tried to go at him a couple times with the slider. They got him, I think, earlier in the. I can't remember if it was the previous at bat or earlier in that at bat, but they tried to go back to it, and they didn't get away with it that time. And then this time with hand, he was trying to look for something up, but he said, but then. In the back of his mind, knew that he might come at him with the slider, and when he got it, he didn't miss it. So he knew it right away as soon as he hit it. He had a walk-off earlier this season at Kauffman. It wasn't a home run, but a walk-off hit. And I think I've asked him, it might have been twice now, about just sort of the mentality in those situations, because, a big spot like that, it seems like he's developing at least that knack for coming through. And he said, he joked, I think both times, that he'd failed enough in those situations to be able to handle them. But yeah, he's basically just stay within the approach, try not to put too much pressure on yourself, and that's worked so far.
I think if it's been such a disappointing season for the Royals. As they're at the halfway point just about now, but he and Alberto Mondesi Jr. are the 2 brightest spots for this team. And Mondesi, of course, now he's resting, recovering from a groin injury. But the fact that Dozier returned and kind of picked up where he left off, what an encouraging sign that's got to be for the Royals.
Yeah, and I mean, he looks like, with him, Mondesi, they look like guys that you would consider the core of what they hope to be building going forward. I think individually there's been some things that you can be sort of optimistic about. It's just overall, like we mentioned, the team's record and the fact that, now they're playing close to the 500 ball. They had sort of talked about if they could do that, going into like May or June, that, they could maybe put themselves in position to be at least in the hunt, or in the conversation as far as potentially a wild card when you get to the end of the season. Obviously, they didn't start that, get to that point early enough for that to really be viable. But individually, whether it's Dozier, whether it's Mondesi, seeing what we've seen from Whit Merrifield, Nicky Lopez coming up, having his little bit of struggles early, but it's starting to come around again in the last couple of weeks. So individually, you see some things, whether it's, the continued development of some of the guys in the pitching staff. I mean, it's just they haven't put it together nearly enough for them to, turn that record around.
Right. The lineup looks good. It has for a while now. Pitching has been a question all season long, and some recent moves have have been noteworthy. Lopez to the bullpen. That seems like a kind of a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's really where he had been. Remember, they acquired him from Milwaukee. Milwaukee had him as a bullpen guy. I mean, I think coming into this season, he had, I believe, 9 starts in the majors, and he had full 10 starts this year with the Royals before they decided to make the move back. So they gave it a pretty good long look. The numbers basically tell the story. I mean, he's one of those guys where I think working through that lineup, turning over multiple times, just didn't work for him. I mean, the first time through, he was holding opponents to like 240 batting average, and they were slugging, less than 400. By the time you get to the third time around, they were batting up over 300 and slugging like 750. I mean, it's just, he's one of those guys where if he can just come out, attack you, have to rely on only a couple of pitches, whatever's working that night, and be able to go at you with that and not have to face the same guys 2 or 3 times, then he's way more effective. And that's what we've seen so far coming out of the bullpen. But as a starter, it just wasn't there. And he was, I think his record was 0-6 by the time they pulled him out. And just, as a reliever, I think he can, get a little more velocity on the fastball and not have to worry about mixing, 4 pitches and trying to set guys up for later at bats.
Right. And if the Royals ever have a bullpen starter, you could see him as a possibility, or somebody who would be a committee guy if they ever had to pull off that trick.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys who can give you, he's not a 1 or 2 batter guy necessarily. I mean, he could give you multiple innings. It's just a matter of, like I said, trying to face the lineup, 2 or 3 times. But he can definitely give you multiple innings. He's that type of guy. He's and if you needed the spot start guy, or a bullpen day where you got to say, okay, who can give us, 2 or 3 innings and sort of bridge it till we get to the rest of the guys in the bullpen. He's definitely that type of guy too.
All right. Okay, and so the Royals have had to perform a little roster ballet here in the last day or so, with Eric Skoglund coming off the 80-game suspension for the drug policy violations. It meant Skoglund to Omaha, Brad Boxberger kind of out of a job, and Hill was on the roster today, pitched today. What do you make of this flurry of moves, and how long before you think we might see Eric Skoglund play for the parent club?
Well, so the reason that Boxberger was basically out of luck was, or the odd man out, I should say, was, so Skoglund had to come off the restricted list, and you had to put him on the 40-man. So you had to make some room somehow for him to go back on the 40-man. That wasn't, there was no debate about that. I mean, that basically you had to do that. So once you did that, I said, okay, now who's coming off of the 40-man roster, whether Skoglund was going to join the big league club, which obviously he didn't, or if he's going to the minors. And so
which he did to Omaha.
Yeah. And he's going to Omaha, and he's expected to go into the rotation there and pitch as a starter, as he's been doing during his rehab assignment. And so Boxberger was basically the last guy. As a matter of fact, Ned Yost referred to as the last guy on the staff. I mean, he had, they signed him in February they were trying to figure out what they're going to do with this bullpen and try and get something solidified there, because last year's bullpen was horrid, and this year they were trying to get some more veterans in there. So they signed him in February, hoping he could regain the form that he had back in 2015. He was an All-Star, and it just wasn't there. I mean, he had a good stretch in May, where his ERA was down under 3. It was like 2.89 and 10 appearances. Opponents were hitting by like 150 off of him. He had a long stretch of scoreless innings in there, but problem was March, April, and then June, he sandwiched a couple of ERAs that were close to 6 around that 1 month where he was pretty good, and it got to the point where he was sort of the pitcher of last resort out of the bullpen on certain nights. So I mean, it basically was just the writing was on the wall. If they were going to make the bullpen move, he was the one that sort of the least reliable of their options. So they cut bait with that. And he had been on just a 1-year deal when they signed him in February.
Right. Okay. So little piece of news that broke today or yesterday, I can't remember now, but Bubba Starling is a is a AAA All-Star. He is a midseason All-Star for the first time in his minor league career. He's the Storm Chasers' lone All-Star representative for the AAA game in El Paso on July 10th. Bubba's hitting .314 with 5 homers, 9 doubles, 9 stolen bases in 61 games. I got to think that this is what the Royals had in mind in terms of building his confidence when they spoke in spring training and just whenever asked about Bubba and why he remains in Class AAA and is not with the parent club.
That's yeah, and also since we're doing podcasts, well, we don't have to worry about the days. People be listening to this different days, so we don't have to worry about that.
Thank you for that, because
go.
that is a skill that I have not yet required as a podcast host to always.
That's right. It happened whatever day that you're listening to it, folks.
That's exactly right.
Anyway, but yeah, Bubba. I mean, and of course, there's been for probably a couple of weeks now. Once Nicky Lopez got called up, that he was the next one in line as far as the fans clamoring for. Let's call this guy up. The team's losing anyway. We want to see him, especially being a local guy. But for him, with all the injuries that have hampered him throughout his career, the fact that he's having success and that he's playing regularly and that he's able to, see sort of things pay off from all the work he's doing, I think that's more important, at least to the front office right now, than, just appeasing fans with, a call-up that also would be somewhat problematic in terms of, he's out of options. So whenever he comes up, you have to keep him up. And then also whenever he comes up, you would want him to play on a regular basis. And right now, with Whit Merrifield playing in the outfield, with them still not reluctant to make Jorge Soler an everyday DH and still have him playing in the outfield, even if people always point to Billy Hamilton, but even with those two and Alex Gordon, even if you take Hamilton out of the equation, there's not necessarily everyday playing time for Bubba right now, which defeats the purpose of, bringing him up if he's not going to play regularly. Obviously, he's missed a lot of time with injuries over the past few years, so you want him to play every day to continue his development, to continue to have success. I would expect that, later on this season that he's probably comes up at some point, but I don't know that he's really harmed by being able to be a AAA All-Star and be able to play every day. And he has still, missed a couple of games here or there with little nagging injuries, but he's played, for the most part all season. So for him to be able to play in a AAA All-Star game doesn't hurt anything. Obviously,
right.
And he's been, stellar defensively. The bat has been really good this season. Not a whole heck of a lot of power, but he's hitting consistently from the start of the season. He had a good spring training, with the big league club. So it's all good signs right now. I guess the only downside is for the folks who are clamoring to see him. But he's one of those guys, I believe he's 26, and you talk about a guy like Dozier who's just coming into his own. He's 27 years old. It's not necessarily ideal if you were to map it out as far as age, but everybody's going to develop at different rates, and you have the injuries that slows things down. So, I think there's still time for Bubba.
Absolutely. Okay, Lynn, let's our final topic will be the Major League All-Star game and Royals representation on the American League team. First of all, what's the timetable for this? We've noticed the push by the Royals for the vote Dozier to the starting lineup. I guess there's the starting lineup voting, and then the manager picks the league picks the roster. So how is this? We've got to be close, right, to getting an all-star team put together.
Yeah. So what and they've changed it a little bit in terms of who gets to decide different parts of the roster. But so the starting lineups, what the fans are voting on, and they've broken that up into two different segments. There was a vote to sort of trim it down to 3 finalists for each position, and that's where Dozier ended up in the finalists at third base. Some people have been like, well, how come a guy like Whit Merrifield isn't in that? Well, partially, and I can come back to this again later, but partially the fact that he switched positions. I think at one point he was on the ballot as a second baseman, and then later on as the outfielder because they brought up Nicky Lopez and made him the everyday second baseman. But so he didn't make it to that final three group, so he's not somebody that they could vote for. So I think that's a big part of why it's all Dozier right now, is because he's the one who still in that final group that had a chance to start. The voting for that closes, I believe, tomorrow, and we find out the All-Star starters on, when I say tomorrow, I mean Thursday. So yeah, so Thursday we should find out All-Star starters, and then after that, Sunday, find out the rest of the roster. What's interesting about the rest of the roster is there's player voting that goes into that, which I believe has already been done. It hasn't been announced or anything, but the players have already voted. And then it's not a manager selection. It's now the way they do it. I guess Major League Baseball, they call it the commissioner's office. I'm not sure who specifically in the commissioner's office, but that's where they'll fill out the rest of the rosters and make sure that every team gets representation. And they may get some input from the managers, but the managers are not picking the remaining roster spots anymore. And so that's where it gets interesting, because everything's in the one basket for Dozier right now because he's the only one who's a finalist. But and I was talking about this earlier today with a couple of different people. That I feel like Whit Merrifield's probably the guy who ends up on this roster, even though everything is all about Dozier right now. Because I think when you get to the player vote, when you get to commissioner's office selecting somebody who's going to represent the team, because you figure with the year the Royals are having, you only get one guy on the roster.
Right.
I think you look down. I mean, just statistically, okay. So now, and obviously, Whit and everybody will say, well, it's only on this year. It's not on past years, because you think about last year, what he did leading the league in hits and stolen bases hadn't been done in I think it was like 2 decades or something like that. Take that out of the equation, even though I think players will have that in the back of their minds when they're voting for people. But you take that out of the equation, we just look at this year. Among the league leaders in batting average, multi-hit games, runs scored, leads the league in hits, leads the league in total bases, ahead of some guy that we like to call Mike Trout. People may have heard of him. Among the league leaders in doubles, triples, extra base hits, hitting like 350 with runners in scoring position. I mean, I think he's the guy. I mean, like I say, it's Dozier right now because of the way the voting broke out. But I think when he gets to, front office people or whoever from the commissioner's office and the players vote, I expect it to be Whit. I mean, not that anything against Dozier, but I mean, I think just the numbers he's put up, the track record he's had. Plus, I think there's, not that players necessarily think about this, but I think there's sort of a feel-good thing there for a guy who spent so much time in the minors, even though he was playing really well, and just sort of got, the numbers game kept him out of the big leagues until he was, about almost 30 years old, and now he's performing and get a chance to make an All-Star game. I think that would be a cool thing.
Yeah, I agree. Not to mention that from a strategy standpoint, he's a pretty valuable guy because he plays the multiple positions. If it's a close game, he hasn't played, you need to make some kind of maneuver to keep your defense strong. The American League would be able to do that with someone like Merrifield. So I agree with you. I think he is the Royals' strongest candidate. What would be the small circle of other candidates who would be a possibility here?
Well, obviously, along with Dozier, I think you talking about Royals candidates?
Yeah, Royals candidates.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Mondi hadn't been hurt, only problem is that shortstop position is always so loaded with guys. Whether it's Lindor or I'm not even sure if they put Gleyber Torres at that position now because he's played there this season for the Yankees with Didi Gregorius out. But there's always a glut of shortstops. But Mondesi, I think, between the two-way player, switch hitter, leading the league in triples, leading the league in stolen bases. I think the injury may hurt him a little bit. I'm not sure even if he was ready to go, whether or not he would or he wouldn't. Just based off of the injury that he's got right now and his track record. I think the health would be the first thing. I guess the other candidate would probably be, and I'm not sure if it would be an All-Star game, but I think definitely for home run derby if he was asked would be Jorge Soler. The power numbers he put up this season, already over 20 home runs, on pace for a franchise record if he was get over 40 home runs a season. He's turned himself into one of the top power hitters in the American League. I think coming into Wednesday, he was 5th in the league in home runs, up there in RBIs in the top 10. So to me, those would be your guys that you would be talking about as candidates for an All-Star game.
Okay, very good. Well, hey, Lynn, I appreciate you spending some time with us. I want you to travel safe to the Great North. We're home of the NBA champion Raptors, and somehow try to have some fun in Toronto on Thursday night.
Yeah, it'll be tough, but I'll try and find a way. And if I run into Kawhi out there, I'll tell him you say hi.
Well, sounds good, Lynn. Take care.
All right, thanks. You too.
Links to the stories we discussed can be found in the show notes on Facebook.com/TrueBlue, the True Blue app, on KansasCity.com, and in the print editions of the Kansas City Star. Thanks to producers Kathy Liu, who somehow got this podcast off the ground without a microphone, and Leah Becerra, who's owed an apology by Lynn and me for violating date reference rules throughout the podcast. We'll be back soon to talk sports in Kansas City on Sports Beat KC.